Hello. Um, yeah, I thought I'd get on here today and tell some stories, share some experiences, and just see what wants to come through. And yeah, I've been nudged for a little while, like a month or so, to show up and tell my stories, and been working up to that. And it's kind of funny. Yeah, I'm not sure what the resistance is about or what the delay or the procrastination really is, but yeah, better late than never and here now. So yeah, for a couple months now, yeah, I've just been feeling like that is the way to build the bridge is by and through telling our own stories and our own experiences and being able to relate that to others that care about us and that we care about, that we share care with, in and through our relationships that are the most important gifts, that we have to share, give, be, and receive and honor and like work with and you know, um, attend to. And so I know in a lot of ways, like what we're all going through as a collective and personally is definitely impacting and affecting our relationships and maybe helping us to reevaluate and revalue, value what's really important and what's really true. And um, yeah, how can we honor our relationships with ourselves and each other, like through this time of adversity and trials and challenges that we're all experiencing on many levels in many ways. And a lot of it has to do with survival and like belonging and safety and security and all that. And so, yeah, that's definitely our core needs and our primal, like, our primal survival needs. And so, yeah, there was um, something that relates. And yeah, I like Michael Mead a lot because he's a good storyteller. And I really wasn't familiar with him at all until last year when I think I joined the Jungian Society in Utah here. And I happened to see an event posted where he was going to come, and it was like a free event that he was doing at the library downtown. And went in with my husband to listen to him, and it was just like, yeah, just really good stuff. It was my thing. And I decided to take the workshop the next day that he was having there, and it was like stretching my comfort zone for sure, and like just doing it spontaneously instead of working myself up to it. Just like, yep, I want to do this, I'm going to do it. So just allowing like that receptivity for that gift. And I did get a lot from it. And yeah, just showing up for those kinds of things in the last couple of years and not like letting my ego talk me out of it, like of how I couldn't show up because it was too hard, or what if people aren't going to like me, or what if I'm awkward and all alone, and all of that and silliness and whatnot. But I do like definitely like from all the medicines and practices and gifts and relationships that I've had throughout the years have like helped me show up and just be me, and wherever I am, like it's like a homecoming. It's homecoming to all I am. So there's this book that I bought at his workshop last year, and it was like one of his newer ones at the time. He was churning out like a book every 3 months, just crazy writing it all out. But yeah, I appreciate his wisdom and the stories that he holds, carries, and shares and offers for healing and revealing like inner truths and inner wisdom. So this one is Awakening the Soul, and it starts with a story about an ancient scribe in Egypt who's lamenting, and he's really world weary, and he's really devastated and grieving about the state of the world that he's living in, where brother's against brother, and sons against father and mothers against daughters and sisters against sister and, all the rest. And that's where, we've been here again and again and again at war with ourselves, and yeah, in certain ways, things aren't that much different. And we just keep cycling through like the same cycles of oppression and disease and then liberation, going back into it. And it's just kind of funny how we do, and how we can start to like kind of see different patterns about these things, and how they keep continuing, perpetuating like the same cycles of dis-ease and isolation and misery, all of that. And the scribe, he's talking about how he's just kind of welcoming death in a way, and he calls out to his soul, or what they call the Ba soul, and just kind of lamenting about his pain and the misery of the world and of existence. And so I'm just going to read a little excerpt here. So he says, "The world-weary man's lament continues with the aching feelings of being isolated and having no one to speak with when it comes to the deeper issues of life and the distress of human suffering and isolation. To whom could I speak anyway? No one remembers the wisdom of the past. No one knows, or no one now helps those who struggle for good in the world. When the truth of suffering all over the world is mentioned, everyone seeks to lay blame on others. To whom can I speak when those who would speak for justice have gone silent and the land is left to the doers of harm? To whom can I turn when there is no intimate friend, no heart that I can trust, and only my own misery endures? Death is in my sight today, and it looks like a clearing in the sky. Put down my misery." And then his soul answers him back. "And my soul said to me, my companion and brother, cast aside your complaints, make offerings on the altar, and struggle for your life. Thrust aside this longing for the West. Appreciate your life in this world. You will attain the West when your body becomes ready to go to Earth. After you are truly world-weary, then we shall both go and make an abode in that world together." And then Michael Meade says, "The time-worn document makes clear that the sense of hopelessness does not simply develop from the writer's own personal problems. Although his consideration of suicide indicates his personal anguish, there is also a clear expression of cultural angst and collective anxiety. He suffers his fate in a deeply personal way, but the suffering derives in part from deteriorating cultural conditions. The weight of social unrest and collective fear adds to his personal sense of alienation from life." The ancient writer likely lived in a period after Egypt had reached the height of its power and materialistic culture. The reign of the Old Kingdom had begun to crumble away, giving way to a time of anarchy, feuding factions, and ubiquitous violence. Responsible government was collapsing and institutions were crumbling. Even the pyramids were sacked and sacred artifacts belonging to the dead stolen away. This collapse led to an era of extreme disruption, bewilderment, and despair as the stability of the Egyptian world turned upside down. So, collective loss of soul. It's one thing for a culture to become caught in the turmoil of change and uncertainty that has happened repeatedly throughout the history of the world. It is quite another thing to forget or lose the sense that we have an inner soul that can hold us close to life even in our darkest hours. The great difference between the ancient scribe and the anxious citizen of the modern world may be experienced as a loss of soul. In ancient times, the existence of the human soul was not often in question. Thus, to live at a time when there is growing loss of soul means to inherit a greater than usual weight of collective depression and existential anxiety. How strange it seems that something that was documented when documentation was just beginning could now become mostly forgotten. Or maybe it is not strange at all if we consider that the most common source of alienation and depression is forgetting that which is most important to us. No matter the time in history or the place in the world, the greatest cause of despair comes from not knowing who we truly are. Not who others want us to be or expect us to be, but who and what we truly are at the core of our souls. In the midst of all the anxiety and uncertainty, something subtle yet enduring about humanity and the world is waiting to rise like the original mound of earth and be discovered again. Most ancient people in traditional cultures imagined some sort of soulful presence that accompanied a person throughout the course of life. Such notions now confound people. A narrow sense of rationality and logic dominates modern life. Many modern people doubt that there is any such thing as a self-defining human soul. Yet there is and must be something essential in each of us, something not simply born of genetics and biology or bred from some random selection of genes. At the deeper levels of being, each person must be in some way unique. Otherwise, life becomes nothing but duplication, imitation, and blind mutation. One of the few things that can stand against the vacancy of mass culture and the onslaught of radical change is the sense of an animating inner soul that makes each person uniquely and essentially valuable. As the original agent of our lives and source of our talents and gifts, the human soul stands against the loss of meaning and purpose so characteristic of modern cultures. Although an elusive concept, soul has traditionally been seen as the underlying substance and distinct force of each person's character and way of being. By virtue of our souls, we are each connected to the essential pulse of life, to the core powers of imagination, and potentially to the ancient inheritance of humanity. Thus, the soul is both ancient and immediate, and it is enduring as well as spontaneous. It is in the depths of the human soul where mystery resides that history can be continually remade. When everything seems to be falling apart, soul is the missing ingredient, but the problem is that the presence of the human soul cannot be proven in logical scientific terms. We cannot analyze, categorize, or contain it, yet we can tell when it is missing. Those who seek to prove the existence of the soul are simply not meeting the issue at the right level. The soul is part of the deeper, more intimate levels of human understanding, where simple reasoning must give way to things that are not only irrational, but also numinous and mysterious. The rational mind reels and falters from all the irrational blows coming from both cultural and natural disasters. A greater psychological awareness is required and a deeper understanding needed if despair would be avoided. As the underlying and unifying force of life, the human soul carries an inheritance of resiliency and a capacity for innovation in the face of disaster. When life becomes severely polarized, when people become alienated and isolated from each other, it is the soul that has gone missing. The modern world suffers a profound loss of soul, not only at the individual level, but also at the level of community and culture. Because humans are secretly tied to the soul of the world, the loss of soul not only diminishes the sense and meaning in human life, it diminishes and wounds the world. We are most lost and feel most abandoned when we have lost touch with soul, for it is in the connecting force in life. Since soul serves as the underlying connection of all things, it has the power to move all things. Thus, soul is the primordial and primary source of meaningful change and true transformation. The time of collective upheaval and cultural loss is also the time of a struggle for the presence of the human soul and a battle for the soul of the world. Recollecting soul. So through our suffering friend from thousands of years ago had to deal with his personal issues and face a host of social ills, even in his desperation, he knew he had a soul. Because of this awareness, he may have felt a greater freedom to approach the edge of life and death and question the meaning of existence. He knew his soul would take the side of life. At the time of his greatest personal doubt, the weary man could not turn to a lifelong witness, an answering voice. The weary man could turn to a lifelong witness, an answering voice that had a meaningful say in whether he lived or died. He instinctively felt and correctly imagined that his soul might know more than him about the core value and his true aim of his life. In the fragments of papyrus that somehow survived the ravages of time, there is an answering voice that speaks for the necessity of living life fully and finding hidden potentials waiting to be revealed. The anguished questioning of life did not go unanswered. Both the personal and collective troubles found a compassionate response from within. The Ba soul was held to be the hidden dweller and resident guide within each person. It was the spirit of individual consciousness in a person and also the deep-rooted source of one's unique way of being. As both a pre-conscious and subconscious pattern of potential wholeness, the Ba was said to include everything that makes an individual unique and one of a kind. The Ba was imagined to dwell within a person's heart, where it remained connected to the inner dream of each person's life. In his hour of need, the scribe turned to his Ba soul, and it turned him back to his origins and the original potentials of his life. The idea and image of an inner guide and life companion has always been important, not necessarily as an aspect of a specific dogma or creed, but as a primordial understanding of the inner nature of human life. Throughout the ages, people all over the earth have been instinctively aware of the existence of an inner presence or cohering center. The ancient Greeks called it a person's inner daimon. In India, the Atman was deemed to reside at the center of one's being. Polynesian culture deemed mana to be the unique force in each life, and the Romans held that each child was born with a resident genius that acted as guiding and protecting spirit throughout the course of life. Whether it is called the Ba or termed a daimon or an inner genius, the enduring message and core concept is similar. Because of the presence of an inner soul, each person is, by nature, a unique being. Each is capable of awakening to a sense of meaning and purpose in life, and therefore each can, in some way, affect the condition of the world. The notion of a unique soul or inner genius places imagination and a potential for renewal at the very center of each life, making each person a potential contributor to the ongoing creation of the world. The idea of contributing to the healing and renewal of the world is essential to avoid feeling powerless and helpless in the face of radical changes and worldwide upheaval. The intensifying anxiety and collective fears in the modern world can be considered a spiritual crisis in which we must find a greater sense of soul, or else become more isolated and alienated from our lives and subject to increasing feelings of hopelessness and despair. The counterweight to the fears and anxieties we face at critical times in life is found in the depths of soul within us. The inner soul knows what we so easily lose sight of, what our life is worth living for, no matter what trouble the world around us may be in. Although most of modern life is arranged to take us away from ourselves, the soul is always on the verge of some great awareness and on the edge of awakening to a more genuine way of being. So, yeah, I'm all about that. That's my jam right there. And yeah, that resonates deeply and true for me. It's true for me. So, yeah, I've experienced those same things, being world weary, being really, forlorn about the state of the world sometimes, and about like the amount of suffering and, the state of the human condition, And so, because I'm an idealist and I do have rose-colored glasses and I do see good around me, sometimes it is hard to see that, a lot of brutality and violence and suffering is happening and is perpetuated, for reasons that don't make sense to us. And that's one of the things that I want to talk about, in certain ways. We know in our hearts that it's not really us, That's not who we really are, And so, what kind of keeps perpetuating and keeps recycling all that, that garbage. And there's a lot to that. And a lot of it is just we haven't known any better in certain ways. And it's also the conditions, some of the conditions that are kind of put in place to keep us in that way, or, in that one way. So, there's just so much to that. And, we're here to learn and we're here to grow, and, whatever doesn't kill us does make us stronger. And, there are those gifts that do teach us who we are, and help us remember who we really are. And so, but there's a lot going on, and do feel that alienation and that isolation, and I'm sure we all have, and not just in the last couple months, not just in the last couple years, but it's become a kind of a chronic thing where we are so disconnected in certain ways, where we can connect so easily with anyone across the world, but can we connect with the person right in front of us in an authentic and vulnerable and allowing, receptive way? Do we really listen? Do we take the time to listen? Do we have time to listen? Do we desire, like, to make those connections? Or are we afraid of intimacy? Are we afraid of our own authenticity? Are we afraid of our own power? Are we afraid of our own being, like our own true being? Are we afraid of our darkness? Are we afraid of our light? Are we afraid of our potential and our limitations? You know, like, are we afraid of our own life and our own power to choose for ourselves and our own power to learn and make mistakes and succeed? You know, what would that be like if we could own all that and we could claim all that and honor it and free it and be it and receive it and, you know, experience all of this in true, whole, full ways? Can we claim that soul? Can we claim our divinity? Can we claim our humanity? Can we claim our beauty? Can we claim our ugliness, our terribleness, you know, our awesomeness? Can we claim, like, all that we be? Can we allow that to be? Can we harmonize and unify that? Can we integrate, like, the parts of our shadow that we've denied or that we neglected or that we didn't realize? You know, like, and that's part of soul retrieval and recollecting and remembering. Yeah. After the dismemberment, after being fragmented and pulled apart and all of that, you know. And it does start with the heart too, and that willingness to open our hearts and to be willing to be love for ourselves and to love what we've been given and to love our lives and to appreciate and value what sustains, supports, and enhances, contributes. All of that feeds, nourishes, nurtures, supports, sustains our life. And yeah, through all of our relationships and contributing to those relationships, it is a reciprocal exchange to and for and through life. So I choose life. Yeah. My soul is life. Yeah. So there's another book that I've always been, of course, drawn to the sacred and to beauty and to nature and to life, to her, you know, to all that's good, true, beautiful, and all that grows. And this one is by Llewellyn Vaughan Lee, The Return of the Feminine and the World Soul. And yeah, I got that years and years and years ago, and I just thought it was a beautiful, like one of the most beautiful books I've ever read in my life. And yeah, I just love the picture too, the waters, and the vessel, and the woman, you know, the goddess, the water bearer, and the well-being, the well that holds it all. And yeah, there's some beautiful things in here, and we'll just see. I just flipped open to a page. We'll see what we have here. Let's see. It says, we get addicted to drugs, sex, or shopping, whatever it is, because there is nothing that nourishes us. We have lost this relationship to what is present within the soul of creation. We have lost relationship to our own soul and to the soul of creation. And just to complete this picture, I want to explain something that Jung understood, which has to do with the light of the divine. The light of the divine has two aspects. One is that what is traditionally known as the lumen Dei, the light of God, which is really the divine light of one's higher self. It is a very, very beautiful light. It is very clear, very simple. It just is. It is the light of God as you can see it as a human being. Of course, the real light of God you cannot see. You become blinded by it. It is said that God has 70,000 veils of light and 70,000 veils of darkness to separate us from experiencing the true light of the divine, which would burn you away. But there is the lumen Dei that we have within us, our divine light. And when you pray to God, your light rises up to God. When you really pray to God, there is light, a spark. You can see it in a way from outer space, that spark that rises up to God from the heart of the human being. It is very beautiful. If you go into deep meditation, you discover that divine light within you. It is like a diamond, very clear, very pure, very beautiful. But that is only half of the way the divine expresses itself. The other aspect is what Jung found in alchemy called the lumen naturae. Looks like lumen, like the light of nature. The divine light within nature. One could say that the lumen day is the masculine expression of the divine, while the lumen naturae is feminine. And it is the light in nature, the light that is present. As a culture, we have completely forgotten how to relate to this feminine light. I think for a lot of traditional cultures, ritual, whether dance or song, music, chanting, or any sacred act, was a way of being with this light and nature. Through this light, you can speak to the soul of an animal, the soul of a mountain, the soul of a tree or plant. It is how you work with the divine within creation. In previous cultures, you wouldn't try to live without it. How would you know what to do? How would you know where to hunt? How would you know about the healing properties of herbs, about what is poisonous, what heals, what ailments? It was in this communication of light with light, a communion with creation. It was when the world was alive. And we have forgotten the world is alive. I had a beautiful experience the other day, which really moved me somehow. I was trying to understand something, and I was taken back in time to how things were in the early days before this cloud of forgetfulness came. I was walking along a path, and I suddenly realized that in those days the path told you where it was going. I had read about the Aboriginal time when the songlines guided the Aboriginals across the desert. But I never realized that a path could actually speak to you and tell you where it was going. But you can see it echoed in some of the songs of Tolkien. He had access to those ancient memories. He was also a medieval English scholar and knew the stories from those very early times when the path came to meet you and told you beyond what the hills, told you beyond what hills it would take you. And this very different relationship of light to light, our own divine light to the light and matter, is very sacred. It is how we learn how to walk, how to live in a sacred manner, because it respects the divine within creation. In the West, it has been erased from our collective consciousness. And of course, this country was founded on the terrible tragedy that the Europeans quite brutally killed off the people who had this understanding. And those who survived were no longer allowed to speak in their native language. So that sacred language was almost erased, and together with it went the understanding of how to talk to the magic that is within creation, this relationship of light to light. In a way, what the alchemists were doing in their crucibles, many native cultures did in their daily life, talking to the light in nature. Whether you call it the Great Spirit or the Anima Mundi, it is the same. It is this living divine principle within creation, and I am completely convinced that we cannot solve the problems in the world, the ecological problems, for example, without invoking this light, this magic, this wisdom, this knowledge, this presence within nature. How can you heal yourself if you treat yourself just as a physical body? Yes, Western medicine does that, and for some things it's good, like healing a broken arm or taking out an appendix. But as most of us here know, that isn't really the complete answer. We are trying to solve this environmental catastrophe purely on the physical plane, which is missing the whole point. It means we are trying to solve the problem in the same way the problem has been created, which is cutting everything off from its sacred source, cutting everything off from its root. Fortunately, the transition or transformation that is needed, and I have looked at this very carefully, does not have to happen on the level of mass collective consciousness. My feeling is that the collective consciousness in the West, which is now a global West, the whole world has become McDonaldized, is caught in a dream, a nightmare of consumerism. I saw that the energy required to take the whole collective out of that dream would be colossal. There would have to be some kind of mega disaster or an enormous influx of grace, or I don't know what. But traditionally in the past, changes have always started just within small groups. They never happened first on the collective level. Just as interestingly, when a change happens within you, when you wake up to something, it's usually just a little spark within you. A small part of you shifts. Suddenly there is light. Something changes. Part of our Western spiritual childness is that we think when that illumination happens, our whole life is going to change. And we are really disappointed to wake up and find we still have the same problems with our partner or our job. We don't realize that you have to work with that light. You have to nurture it. You have to bring that light into your life. And this takes time and patience. If we can just bring back an awareness of her presence, that divine being that is the earth, the soul of creation, if we can just bring her back, then we can create a space where the light can come back into her world. It's really just a matter of accepting the mystery this mystery within creation. It's not something very complicated, just as there is this moment when you allow your own soul into your life, when you say yes to this inner part of you. Say yes. This is simply to take that to the next step, to acknowledge that the world is a sacred being. I always find it strange that somehow we are very keen on working with ourselves as a sacred being, but we don't realize that the sacred being that is ourselves is part of a much bigger sacred being that is the world, that is creation. Human beings have a very pivotal role to play. For example, until human beings welcome them in, certain divas and angels are often not allowed to participate directly in our life. They are here. Sometimes one can see them waiting. Very, very beautiful, very powerful nature divas, earth divas, and angels. And they are waiting on the sidelines. They are waiting while we tear up the world because they need to be welcomed. They need to be welcomed in. The earth was given to humanity so we could evolve together, so we could have this relationship between the light of our soul and the light of creation, this alchemical interaction of light upon light. That was what life was always about for thousands and thousands of years. That's what the mystery of creation was about. Now, when we look at the past civilizations like the Egyptians and see the pyramids of other sacred buildings, for example, Stonehenge, we don't understand the real meaning behind them. They were being used to bring in that light, to focus those energies so the priests, the initiates could work with them, so that the lights from above and the lights that come from creation could work together. In Egypt, they did it through building the pyramids. In this country, they had other ways of working, like the sun dance or for the Hopi, the serpent dance. Ways of weaving together the energies within creation and the energies that are part of the human being. And there are certain very powerful words given only to initiates, to be spoken only at certain times, that speak to the soul of the world, to the magic in creation. Certain incantations that begin to awaken the energies in the earth, because that's what human beings were about. The purpose of being human is not going to Walmart and getting more stuff. The whole of life was about making that creative relationship, that spiritual relationship. Yes, there was the concern with survival. There was often famine and sickness, but underneath there was always a relationship to this divine intelligence within creation. But then Western man was given too much power, and rather than working with nature, he decided to control nature. And so he developed technologies to control nature, whether to build a house that was completely insulated or to manufacture chemicals to make the plants grow quicker. We wanted to control nature, which is really the masculine power drive to control the feminine. And part of that control from the very beginning was to deny the sacred nature, or to deny the sacred within nature. In the same way, the Catholic Church denied the sacred within women. How many women were burned as witches, women who understood healing and plants, who were midwives? You deny the sacred in the feminine, and then you can more easily have power over her. And now we are trying to redeem this ecological crisis with the same tools of oppression rather than going back to what caused it. That would mean for each of us to take the spark of our own soul and make this relationship again with the spark of the world soul. It's very simple. Spiritual things are very, very simple. The world soul is still alive. If the world soul had died or humanity had completely cut itself off from the world soul, humanity would start to regress, as happens when you are completely cut off from your own soul. You go back to a previous era of your own evolution to more primitive behavior. You are often drawn back into the destructive aspect of the instinctual world. If we had completely cut off the world soul, if we had killed her, then a certain life on this planet would be over. Life might continue on a purely physical level, but a certain magic within creation would be gone. A certain spiritual meaning in life would no longer be accessible to us. You can actually see signs of that already, because for many, many people, there is no longer any spiritual meaning in life. They have substituted for their addictions. Their addictions, or what they can get at the malls. Life is no longer seen as an expression of the divine. If that were to cover everything, then the world would be over. It could not regenerate itself in the same way that a human being cannot regenerate herself without the energy of her soul, without the divine within. So really, the first step is to acknowledge that the world is a spiritual being, just as you acknowledge for yourself that you are a spiritual being. And the next is to recognize the mysterious relationship between the individual and the world, known traditionally as microcosm and macrocosm, in which every human being is the microcosm of the whole. It is reflected in the Sufi tradition of the perfect man, the qith, the pole, It's interesting. Yeah, not sure. It's Quth. Quith. Is the one human being alive on the planet at any one time who lives the real potential of what it means to be a human being. And he carries this truth, this potential for the whole of creation. If he weren't here, creation could not rise up to its potential. It's a very important principle in Sufism. But each of us in our own way, the microcosm of the whole. And what that means is that we have a direct relationship to the powers within creation. This knowledge has been systematically erased from our consciousness. We read in history about the burning of the books, for example, how the library in Alexandria that contains so many of the esoteric traditions of hundreds of years was destroyed, burnt. We hear how the Chinese systematically burnt the libraries of the Tibetans. The Tibetans did extraordinary work having to do with magic within the powers in creation, and most of their teachings have been lost. There are enormous amounts of esoteric teachings that have been lost, and in the West, the Catholic Church got rid of this tradition of the power within creation and how to work with it. The Inquisition did its part in this, and it was very, very systematic. But there are places where the knowledge is still alive and you can actually experience it in the land. I have a friend who went to India to see a friend who was there. Let's see. She did the proper training, spent 12 years in a cave, and she is now making a little nunnery in the hills. She never realized what it is to experience the land when it is alive and singing. You can feel the magic in the air when you can feel the devas present. For us, this is like a myth, an ancient story that happened somewhere else, but there, people have been doing practices that welcome the sacred in the land. They have kept this relationship alive, so the land is alive. The soul of the world is full of all this magic, this creative potential, and it's waiting for us to relate to it, to welcome it back. And we can do this because we each of us have within us a direct connection to that magic within creation. The moment of crisis is always a moment of potential. The gates of grace open in a way that they were not open before. It is a strange thing when human beings reach a real crisis. We are given a grace we are not otherwise given. And so it is with the world. There is this grace available now, the energy to awaken the soul of the world before we kill everything, before everything is forgotten, buried so deeply under the walmarts of the world that there is nothing left. When that happens, then the world will die. It's as simple as that, because it cannot live without its soul. Wow. Or the world soul could express its dark side, like the Kali side of the feminine, and become incredibly destructive. That is a very real possibility, because if we have forgotten the world is a living being, we have also forgotten the powers of creation, can get angry. That forgetting belongs to the masculine myth of domination and control that says we can control nature. We believe that nothing too bad can happen, since, as we're told, nature is not really alive. But this is not so. This is why in ancient times the people were very careful in their relationship to nature and the spirits of nature, why they learned how to talk to nature and be present within nature, and how to listen to it, how to make a living relationship with it. Now you go out on the freeways and the shopping malls and the TV channels, and it isn't there. There isn't even a memory of it, let alone any sense of how to bring it alive. So how do we recreate that relationship with the anima mundi, the soul of the world, this living presence in creation? My sense is it has to be done through simple things, because you always go back to what is simple. It is like what Mother Teresa said, small things with great love. It's not what you do, but the love you put into the doing. And there is a way to perform the simple acts of life, like making a meal or even just having a bath, with a certain awareness, conscious of being in relationship with what you are actually doing. Remember, it used to be prescribed, although we have forgotten it. Bathing used to be a ritual. Cooking used to be a ritual. The women did it together. They used to sing when they pounded the grain together. They sang the songs of creation as they pounded the grain. It was all part of this very intricate relationship between the energies in creation. But we can't go back. We don't pound the grain anymore, and we've forgotten the chants and the prayers that went with the ritual bath. Nobody is here to teach them to us anymore. They have been lost. And so we have to discover it each for ourselves in our own way. In those simple acts we do, we have to welcome the anima mundi, welcome her soul, welcome her presence back to us. And then slowly we will come back into relationship with her. We have to welcome her in those simple acts, first of all, because we still have to do them. We still have to eat, to wash, to breathe. Most of us don't go into the fields anymore, so we don't sing the songs of planting and harvesting and grinding corn anymore. In the 60s, hippies tried to go back to doing that, but it didn't work very well. But there are the basic things of life. We can always return to what is basic and simple in life. And time is not the issue. Everybody is always very busy these days, I know. But you still brush your teeth. But are you really present in that experience? So the first step, to give a space. And I think it is the easiest to give her a space, as I say, in those simple, very necessary things that have to do with just being a human being. As Sufis, as in many spiritual paths, we also do it in awareness of breath. If you are really aware of your breath, the breath is extraordinary. With every breath you take, the energy comes down from the soul into creation and then goes back to the soul. If you were really aware of what happens in every cycle of your breath, you would be a liberated human being. With every breath, you would come from the plane of the soul, from the clear light beyond this world, and you would bring that energy down into the physical world, into the magic of creation, where that light nourishes your own body and communicates with and receives communication back from the cells in your body and the light flowing in your body. And then you would return with that information to the plane of the soul. It's extraordinary. And I'm just gonna leave it at that, because that was freaking amazing, and it went along perfect with what wanted to be expressed and said, and with the awakening of the soul, and then the return of the feminine and the world soul. Wow, it's just too cool. Didn't plan it out. It's just simple and perfect and what's needed. And that's just kind of funny, because life and love and light speak through us and are always speaking to us if we can make the space to be receptive and get out of our own way, because it's really not all that complicated, but we make it complicated. And yeah, that's where our complexes come from sometimes. It's just kind of funny. We're just so silly being so silly, silly beings being silly. And so yeah, it's just kind of pretty rad right there. Pretty magical, like those beautiful gifts and nuggets of wisdom. And yeah, it goes along with certain things that are kind of happening about polarization and things, and with the feminine and the masculine too. It's kind of a pretty good synchronicity, because I've been contemplating gender since I did a video 2 weeks ago maybe on the principles, the 7 or 8 principles of Hermeticism, or the Hermetic principles. And it's kind of funny, I had journaled about those in February, and the last one, gender or generation, I kind of didn't go much into, and I figured, I get to look at that a little more. And talking with a friend the other day about gender, it's kind of funny how that came up again, and how it was nudging me, look at this. And so yeah, I get to do a little more digging into that. So that's pretty awesome, pretty cool. She has some things to show me about that. So, and I've super appreciated my reconnection, my connection, and my affection, and my love, and her love that she has for all, and that she has for me, and that she has for we, and that she has for herself, and all that she is. And her presence in my life, it makes life so full and so beautiful and precious, And so yeah, just welcoming her back, welcome her back home, and welcoming me home to my own heart, home of my soul, home for my soul. And so yeah, and praising her soul and our souls, yeah. And what that soul means to me, what that soul brings, what that soul holds, what that soul carries, what that soul frees, offers and receives, shares. Just breathe light, breathe love, breathe life into your soul, into your body that is whole, a body that is part of our soul, And that's like spirit and mind are traditionally seen as masculine qualities, and then the body and soul are traditionally seen as feminine qualities. Yeah, and they're like friends, and they're part of each other. And so can we honor that relationship and that connection as the two that are one, and the one, yeah, that is whole. A wholeness and fullness and wellness, soulness. Yeah. So let's welcome that soul back home. Let's welcome her back home. Let's welcome ourselves back home. Let's welcome our love back home. Yeah, I'll come back with another video to share some personal stories and how, yeah, on my alchemy journey, I've been working on retrieving and integrating and honoring and welcoming my soul back home to be whole. Full, whole soul. Yeah, embodied soul. Well, thanks for listening, and be well. And I love you all. Be well.